J. Hecker and Charles L. Freer worked together on railroads, first in New York and then in Indiana. In December 1879, they formed the Peninsular Car Works, a company that built railroad cars. Originally, the company was located on the Detroit River, but relocated in 1884 to Ferry Avenue between Russell and Decatur. The Peninsular Car Company joined with the Michigan Car Company in 1892 and became the Michigan Peninsular Car Company. In 1899, the Michigan Peninsular Car Company consolidated with 12 other railroad car companies and formed the American Car and Foundry Company. At this time, Freer retired from business, but maintained an office at 915 Union Trust Building until about 1913. The original Union Trust Building was located at Griswold and West Congress in Detroit. The offices of the Michigan Peninsular Car Company were located on the 9th floor, beginning when the building opened in 1896. Charles Freer kept an office there at number 915 from 1896 until 1913, according to Detroit City Directories. The Union Trust Company built the Guardian Building and moved there in 1929. The original building was razed in 1957, and now the building known as the Cube is in its place. In the 1880 U.S. federal census, Charles Freer was a boarder at the home of Caroline Elber, the widow of John Nicholson Elber. This home was located on Jefferson Avenue between Hastings, which is now the Chrysler Service Drive, and Brevard, near Saints Peter and Paul Jesuit Church. John Elber came to Detroit around 1840 and established a merchant sailing ship business. He died in 1862. The original home was torn down when Jefferson Avenue was widened, and his widow Caroline built a new home. She died in 1896. Freer lived at a few different addresses on East Jefferson until he moved to 77 Elfin Street, Rush Park, in about 1855. Charles Lane Freer was a boarder at this house at 77, now 225 Alfred Street, between 1885 and 1892, when his house on Ferry Street was completed. It was owned by Anna McDonald McLaughlin. She was the widow of Andrew S. McLaughlin, who died in 1879. His two sisters, Flora and Sarah, were the first and second wives of David Whitney, Jr. Sarah dedicated a Tiffany window to the McLaughlins in 1911 at the First Presbyterian Church on Woodward Avenue. In a letter to James Whistler in Paris, dated January 9, 1894, Freer wrote, "Please note change of address to my new residence at 33 Ferry Avenue instead of the old 77 Alfred Street." Hannah McLaughlin's grandson, Russell, became a writer for the Detroit Free Press and wrote a book called Alfred Street in 1946. He reminisced about his boyhood growing up on Alfred Street and discussed how, when Freer lived there, he brought a dog that ended up being named Turf Freer McLaughlin. Hannah loved the dog so much that when he died, she missed church, which was something she never did. Also, the only photographs Russell remembered being in the parlor of 77 Alfred Street was one of his grandfather, Andrew, and one of Turf. J. Hecker and Charles L. Freer met in New York. They went to Indiana to work on the railroad and then on to Detroit. They were partners in forming the Peninsular Car Company in 1879. Hecker began building 1170, now 5510, Woodward Avenue in 1888. The primary architect was Louis Kemper, and the style is French Renaissance. Hecker's daughter Anna married Charles Freer's brother Watson in November 1891. Their home was also on Ferry Street at the corner of John R. In the 1900 U.S. Census, Freer and Hecker can be seen as neighbors, with Freer's gardener Joseph Warren and his wife living between them. Freer lived with his butler and cook, while Hecker and his wife, son, daughter, 3 maids, a coachman, a gardener, and a laundress lived at the mansion on Woodward.
The Charles Lang Freer House was originally at 33 East Ferry Avenue and is now at 71 East Ferry Avenue, located on Wayne State University's campus in Detroit. In 1887, Freer and Hecker purchased adjoining plots of land off Ferry Avenue in a fashionable neighborhood not too far from their plant. In comparison to Hecker's elaborate house, Freer wanted something more modest and simple, as he was living alone and would entertain a small number of friends at a time. Freer traveled frequently for work and toured neighborhoods to find inspiration for the architecture of his home. He saw a house in Germantown, just outside of Philadelphia, and decided he wanted a similar shingle-style home. He hired Wilson Eyre, the architect of the Philadelphia house, in 1890, and his house was completed in 1892. The house was made from blue limestone from New York, which is now discolored with age, and shingles made of Michigan oak, which was stained to a darker color. The house was expanded to accommodate Freer's growing art collection in 1906, 1910, and 1913. One of these expansions was to accommodate the addition of the Peacock Room to the carriage house. James Abbott McNeill Whistler, the famous artist and Freer's close friend, designed and painted the dining room of Frederick R. Leyland in 1876 in England, and Freer purchased the room in 1904. It was then installed in Freer's carriage house and today is on display in the Freer Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. Despite his growing home and collection, Freer never wished for his house to become a private museum, and he stored much of his collection in a fireproof vault, bringing pieces out one by one to show to guests, following an Eastern practice. After his death in 1919, the majority of his collections were transferred to the Smithsonian. The house has been on the Michigan Registry of Historic Sites since 1970 and the U.S. National Registry of Historic Sites since 1971. When Freer passed away in 1919, his house was purchased by the Merrill Palmer Skillman Institute for Child and Family Development. The school at Freer House opened in 1920 and shortly thereafter opened the second nursery school in the United States. The institute was incorporated into Wayne State University in 1980, of which it is still a part. It is focused on improving well-being in children, youth, and families, the study of child development, and supporting research, education, and outreach programs.
Despite his successes in the world of business, Charles Freer is oftentimes remembered for his contributions to the arts as a collector and a patron. Upon his death in 1919, most of his extensive art collection would be donated to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. However, his influence on the artistic community of Detroit is still visible through the opening of the Detroit Museum of Art, or as it's better known today, the Detroit Institute of Arts. The Detroit Museum of Art initially opened at 704 East Jefferson Avenue in 1888
thanks largely to philanthropic support from Freer and other Detroit-based moguls. Freer would continue throughout the years to support the institution with generous donations of artwork and financial support, as well as frequently lending out portions of his own art collection and using personal connections with famous artists to benefit the museum. Later, Freer would provide the funds to buy the land where the Detroit Museum of Art would reopen its doors in 1927 as the Detroit Institute of Arts. It is now located at 5200 Woodward Avenue and still operates today.